welcome to United for Good. I'm Margaret O'Neill with United Way of Central West Virginia. Always a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for watching. Our thanks, as always, to the Library Television Network and the West Virginia Library Commission for allowing us to be part of their excellent programming. I have two really special guests with us today. I want to, before I introduce them, just preface it with, people ask us a lot at the United Way how we work with social issues, what that looks like as far as substance use disorder, and the folks that we come in touch with either through our funded partners or through our work out of the United Way office. And then folks always or often ask us about the homeless situation that we encounter or people experiencing homelessness in our community, and how as a United Way we work on that issue or around that issue. And so I can tell you that we work really hard on that issue, but we work with diligent partners. And so I am, without a doubt, the least educated person on the set today. You're going to hear from two experts. You're going to hear from two people whose knowledge and experience I value more than most, and two of the people that are on speed dial from United Way staff when we get into a situation that we know we aren't able to take care of ourselves, and who we can reach out to for support. So we have two guests today. I'm going to introduce you both and then kind of talk to you individually, and then feel free to chirp in if one of you says something that you don't agree with from your prospective organization. We're all friends here. And so first and immediately to my left and in the middle is Taryn Wary. Taryn is the director of the CARE team for the city of Charleston. I read it, I tried to memorize it, but I'm going to let you tell them what CARE stands for.
The CARE team stands for the Coordinated Addiction Response Effort.
And I said to you when I invited you to be our guest, before we really go into what all you do, I think it's really important that people know that you are experienced and educated, and that you chose to live in West Virginia, and that you chose to be here and be a part of this work. So tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you found yourself here.
I am from Pennsylvania originally. I was born and raised in a small town north of Harrisburg, along with the Amish and all that exciting stuff. I'm a diehard Pittsburgh fan.
Yeah, we won't hold that against you.
So don't sing Sweet Caroline around me. But anyhow, after I graduated college, I moved to Vermont for a short while, for a few years, and I worked up there at a trauma treatment center for teenage kids. And I missed home. I was up there for probably about 4 years, missed home, had some stuff going on in the family. So I moved back home right in time for COVID to start. So I was inside my house, just trying to do some, yes, yeah. And it was not for me. And at that point, I was in a relationship with somebody from here in Charleston, and so we started getting more and more serious in the midst of COVID.
As a lot of people did. Either got an animal or a partner, I find.
Exactly. Yep.
Some got both.
So I like to say I'm happy anywhere there's mountains. So I had come down here to Charleston to visit her and fell in love with West Virginia. I say Appalachia Mountains.
You are wrong.
I know. But it's funny now that I'm home, I say Appalachia. Right. My family's like, what?
Where?
So she was finishing up her doctorate in nurse anesthesia. So I moved down here while she finished school, and we had plans to move as soon as she was gone, and here we are.
And we're not going anywhere.
Yep.
So thankful that you came. Let me start with that. And so grateful for your compassion and knowledge and how you help the people in Charleston. So Mayor Goodwin, really, so kudos to, we have a great mayor, and really was elected kind of riding that wave of information regarding homelessness and substance use disorder in the city, and really made it a focal point of hers at the beginning to find solutions. She's a huge advocate that we all work to find solutions to challenges, and so the CARE team was a part of her opioid response work, but you do so much more than that, right? So the quick response team is buried within your organization. Talk about that for just a minute.
Let me back step. Yep. I didn't only move to Charleston for love. When I was,
but it's okay,
it was the primary reason. But when I was looking for work here, I remember being on Indeed and looking, for positions. Sure. And I remember seeing this. Initially, I came in as the quick response team coordinator with the CARE office. So I saw this and saw that it was based out of the local city government. And I remember then being like, this is so cool. Like, what kind of city government is taking on these types of, issues and facing them? So that was, a huge draw. And then when I found out, I had gotten the position, I was ecstatic and really excited. And it's grown from there. And now I have the opportunity to serve as the director for the care office. But like you said, the care office is a multifaceted approach. We found that it's not just substance use, it's not just mental illness, it's not just homelessness. Everything plays together. You don't often have one without another, or all, or whatever. So we do have a mental health coordinator. We do a lot of mental health outreach and response. Like I mentioned, the quick response team, which is the substance realm. So we have response and follow up on substance-related issues and calls. We have homeless outreach coordinator and homeless outreach specialists who, work days, nights, and weekends, just connecting folks to services, to shelters, to treatment facilities, to whatever it looks like. And we do have a case manager, and we just work hard to try and get people plugged into the areas that they need to be.
Yeah, and I think that's, what I appreciate about the mayor, and certainly what I appreciate about you and your team, is that it's not just about moving people out of sight. It's moving people to whatever it is they need, right? Moving people to shelter, or moving people to a driver's license, or a social security card, or a birth certificate, or whatever that looks like in particular for that family or that person. And so before we talk to Tracy, let's just put out the whatever fires that you want to put out. This is your opportunity to say, people aren't bused here.
Right.
Tracy's going to help us talk a little bit about the recent survey that came out from the state of West Virginia regarding homelessness in our state, or people experiencing homelessness. But, what we all know is that Charleston does have more resources than anywhere else in West Virginia, and that people do come here for services. Also have some of the largest shelters and some of the largest hospitals. So can you just put that out for us? And
I think Tracy will hit on this with the study that was released by the state, but I mean, it's no secret. We go to where things are. People come to Charleston for the regatta and for events, and we go to different areas for shopping, and people go to the outlets at the beach, and you just go to places that have things. So similarly, people, a lot of what we've seen in the study, in the state study, and what we know to be true is the folks that we see on our streets are from West Virginia. They're from Appalachia.
Good.
Yeah, and
we'll tell you their story. I have found. We'll tell you where they're from.
Yes.
And many times, we talk about this a lot, and Dr. Brumage taught me this a long time ago when he was still in Charleston. But that experience of not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And I think if you have that experience or opportunity to talk to people, they'll often tell you what happened to them that caused them to be in a situation. And the other misnomer that we could put out is, I do know about you two, but to me and us, I've never had one person say, yep, I grew up, man, dreaming about that box under that bridge, and I knew it was going to be a good time. So, I mean, that's just not the case.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. It's not, people aren't bused here through, other cities and things like that, but they're here because, like you said, that's where the resources are. It's because it's where people care. They can get connected to services, like you mentioned, get their ID, get their birth certificate, back into the workforce, and all of those things.
Which is our goal, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
So the ultimate goal is, what do you need to be whole? Does that start with shelter, then to housing, then to jobs, or jobs first, whatever, recovery first, whatever that looks like? I think that is part of what I love. I love so many things about your work, but part of what I love is meeting people where they are and access to what they need to make them whole, whatever that looks like. And you do it all.
We try.
The other thing I just want people to know is you don't just do it through the day. You touched on it briefly, but you have outreach teams now, not from the beginning, but as you've grown your body of work, you have outreach now on evenings and weekends too, is that true?
Evenings and weekends. We're striving, our goal obviously is to be a 24/7 response team, but we're not quite there yet. So we do typically have somebody available until 8 to 10 or 11. We have people readily available until 8 p.m. every day, and then by phone available and can come in certain emergencies.
So tell me what you would do if you were in a situation and I go to work, and when I go to work in the morning, there's something, person, place, or thing that causes me to be uncomfortable with the situation that I'm in. What would you tell people to do?
give us a call. Absolutely, feel free to give us a call. We're happy. I like to tell people that if you don't want to call the police and it's not a fire or EMS emergency, you can call the care office. That's, we work closely with our police and fire departments, and we collaborate with one another. But if it's something like that, that's a perfect reason to give us a call. We'll come, talk to the individual, get them some breakfast, and help them get on their way to other things if that's the appropriate response.
Yeah, it just, in my humble opinion, and I'm certain that there will be people that disagree with this, but in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily help the situation to post pictures and negative comments on social media, but to reach out to the people who may be actually able to help. Nobody wants to be threatened or scared.
Right.
I don't, nobody does. But you got to know who to reach out to that can help you with that and not necessarily just add fuel to the fire, if you will.
Yep.
So what's that number?
You can call me directly.
No.
That's the number that's posted everywhere. Okay. So the phone number, it's my cell phone, so you can call or text. It's 304-881-1686. And then if there's other, if it's after hours issues, I'd be happy to give you the phone numbers of our outreach specialists who are available in the evenings. But like I said, you can call or text that number. And if I'm not available, I'll definitely get somebody who is.
And she's responsive, friends. I mean, Friday night, 2 weeks ago, maybe on a Friday night, I'm like, please, Taryn, there's somebody around our building. And although we too at the United Way very much want to serve people, when the building becomes threatened or people become threatened, it's a situation that we have to address as well. And it just feels better to say, can you have somebody just drive around and say, please don't sleep here tonight, or please charge your phone and don't leave your trash, whatever that looks like. But there are ways to, with empathy, address the situations that we see around town.
Sure.
Right? That's what we would hope for.
Yeah.
Trey, we'll just move on down the line a little bit. So one of the very first people I met when I moved to Charleston, working on 8 years now, was Tracy Strickland, who's the executive director of the Kanawha Valley Collective, KVC for short. And I know your roles have kind of morphed in the last couple of years with what you never meant to do post-COVID. But tell us a little bit about the collective, and then you can talk a little about Equinox, and then we'll ask some questions.
So the Kanawha Valley Collective actually started as a planning committee to work on ending homelessness in Kanawha, Boone, Putnam, and Clay counties. For a number of years, it was really grassroots. It was ran by the agencies that were members. About 10 years ago, we went to a part-time executive director, and then in 2020, 10 weeks before COVID, we decided we needed a full-time executive director, and that was me.
You've never been so glad we decided that, have you?
I had a whole plan on January 1st, 2020 of what was going to happen, and I have a whole plan that's still things that have not happened. But so now the KVC, I kind of describe it as a two-headed monster. Like one side of us is the planning group that coordinates the work to end homelessness in our area, and the other side is actually a direct service provider, which is never anything we had planned on diving deep into. COVID required a response as agencies began to pull back services to people who were experiencing homelessness while we had this pandemic. We decided we needed to step forward and set up some temporary services through that. And then about a year and a half ago, it became apparent that our men's emergency shelter was going to need new leadership, and no one really stepped up to do that. So we are now doing that as well. So probably our biggest unplanned service is what's known as Equinox Men's Shelter. And then we also operate our area's database system, our homeless management information system. We also operate our centralized assessment team, which is the team that attempts to provide every person experiencing homelessness in our area with an assessment that kind of starts their pathway to services. What interventions do they specifically need?
Okay, so let's pretend that I am experiencing homelessness, which could, as my husband, could happen anytime. And that would be my first step, right? Would be to find my way to centralized assessment. And that's located at
1015 Smith Street.
anything we tell you, numbers or addresses, you can always call us at the United Way, and these folks are giving you our information. We can refer you to anything they mention or talk about today, so don't worry about it if you can't find a pencil. But Smith Street, right across from Capital Market, is centralized assessment. And talk a little about the assessment. Like, what kind of questions do I have to answer?
So they are, depending on if you have children under the age of 18 or not, you're looking at 31 to 36 questions that are all yes or no, or just one very short answer. And some of them are a little personal. You know, we ask about histories of mental illness, histories of homelessness, history of substance use. How have those things impacted your housing? If you have certain healthcare conditions, has your healthcare needs impacted your housing? And it's really looking for housing barriers, so we can look for really a level of intervention to help people get housed.
So if I've been housed before and something just happened, be it COVID, where I lost my job for 6 months and couldn't pay rent and I became homeless at that point, that's one level of care, right? Because I probably know how to pay bills and can probably do that. Or I'm somebody who has a combination of, and Taryn referred to this, a combination of mental illness, substance use disorder, and maybe just a lower education level to start with, right? And I've never really had to do those things. I can still be housed. You can still find something for me.
So the purpose of the assessment isn't to screen people out of services. It's to align our services up with people. So if you have only lost your housing because of a specific event, and this is your first time homeless, and Taryn has had multiple episodes of homelessness and probably more barriers, you all probably don't need the same resource. So if I give you a resource meant for somebody with higher need, well, then Taryn doesn't get a resource because you've taken it. So it's really about a way for us to use our resources smarter, because I don't think it's a surprise to anyone up here. There aren't enough resources. So it's about spending what we have better.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for just a second, because I think that is a misnomer, that people think there are unlimited resources, and there really isn't. I mean, each of us guard them very closely, and all of us work together to preserve them and make them last as long as we possibly can, right? So that isn't true, either from a state or federal level, be it HUD or the state of West Virginia. There's just not enough resources to go around to make sure that everybody has the experience they need to be housed. And do you, two-part question, do you also believe, as we do, that there is a shortage of affordable housing, not only in our community, but really in West Virginia?
I believe there is. I have seen a change in housing resources over the years, from the number of landlords we have, like just the sheer number of people who are landlords. We seem to have fewer landlords with more properties. You have landlords that won't accept housing assistance. You have some that don't want to follow fair market rent. You have some that don't want to do the things maintenance-wise that are required. So all of these variables just reduce the number of housing options that people have.
What's the number one thing you see that keeps people from being housed? Tough question. And I asked that because it just made me think of it. Like, you can both answer that, but I just wonder if you see a trend, or if is it mental illness? Obviously, one of the biggest challenges, but is it? Some people would say, well, you got to have a thirsty horse. So do you have people who simply don't want to be housed, or as you've described to me all the time, we just haven't found the right option? Do you want to speak, either or both of you, to that for a minute? Like, Tracy couldn't be in a shelter. I'm not going to be in a shelter.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's lack of resources. We don't have enough options for the various things that people are experiencing. So if somebody's in a mental health crisis, being in housing could be very difficult. So finding them an appropriate location is not always, it's truly just not an option. Or, like Tracy said, there's just not enough affordable housing for folks. I'd say that we have a lot of folks that have the potential to be housed right now, and the issue is finding a place to actually live. So I think it's a lot of different things, but it comes down to a lack of resources.
No matter what the problem. Do you
Right.
want to add on to that?
Well, I mean, I think there's this belief that if somebody's experiencing homelessness, that they should just be happy with whatever housing they can get. And while on some level that's maybe true, there's different variables with each individual that we need to meet. You know, right now, I think probably what we're seeing a lot of is people who need accessible housing because of their, you know, health care or their physical health concerns. But, you know, and Margaret, you've heard this story before. I mean, I have this belief that, you know, when you're looking at housing, you're looking at some people who need hallways and some people who need doorways. You look at, you know, high-rise apartment buildings around town, and those are great. But for someone that maybe has severe mental illness, maybe just has an anxiety disorder, maybe just likes to be alone, being
Boy, do I know people like that.
you know, putting somebody in, you know, in an apartment building with 99 other apartments is not always ideal. So, you know, that's one of the other challenges we have to housing people is actually matching the person up with the type of housing that's available. And those are some of the little things that you have to think about. You know, how close is it to transportation? How close is it to a resource that specific person needs? How many neighbors do they have?
Yeah, access to a bus stop.
Yes.
Yep.
So
Transportation
just all
issues.
these different variables that you click down the list with each person. And, you know, we also, you know, fortunately we end up at times where we find an apartment and the person we found it for, it doesn't work for. So then you're looking for somebody else
Who's next?
to fill that apartment.
Yep.
But, you know, it's you know, we are dealing with people. And I think society forgets that sometimes. Like, we are dealing with human beings with all of the different idiosyncrasies that human beings have.
Sure.
You know.
And like, you can't make me live somewhere I don't want to live.
Right. And, you know, while you and I agree on a great many things, we're also very, very different.
Exactly.
So, you know, finding what would work for me might not be what would work for you. And the idea that, well, you need this resource, you should just accept it, just is
Yes.
I think that mindset is part of what has gotten us into this situation, because we're serving a lot of people that have a fundamental lack of trust for the services we provide. And it's because of treatment they've gotten in the past, or, you know, they've services they thought they were going to get that they didn't get, or services that didn't meet their needs, but they were, you know, basically just told they needed to accept them. And when they have, quote unquote, failed in that, you know, that failure follows them.
Yep.
On
Trust.
paper,
There's
and
no
then
trust.
and then it, you know, it follows them personally too.
Yeah. So I don't want us to run out of time without just a mention again of, there is a recently issued state survey that Department of Human Services, DOHS, commissioned, or the legislative body commissioned them to do. A nugget or two you want to mention? I mean, I encourage anybody who's interested in this to go read it. You can access it online pretty easy. We shared it with some folks this past weekend, but anything?
I mean, I think one, it really, most of it was not very surprising. You see a lot of people with ties to West Virginia. They may not have ties to the city that they're in, but again, like, you know, you all talked about earlier, people move to where resources are.
And it did kind of confirm that, right? That people are basically from here, even
Yes.
if it's not Kanawha County, for example.
And, you know, that's kind of just true for the geography of West Virginia. I mean, think about the people you work with and how many of them don't live in Charleston, but yet your office is in Charleston. Like, people have to
Sure.
go places for
Sure.
work, for services, for whatever they need. I think the other thing is, it seems our number of homeless veterans is decreasing. Only about 5% of the people experiencing homelessness are veterans, which is a positive
Really good.
change.
Yep.
Because I can remember when that was closer to 25, 30%. And we're seeing what seems to be a growth in not just the 18 to 24 age group, but the 25 to 35 is probably where our biggest growth was, that 25 to 35 age group. It used to be individuals that were homeless in our area were white males, 45 to 55, that were had a really good chance of being a veteran. What we're seeing now is that age is getting younger, and we also have a racial disparity when it comes to experiencing homelessness. About 12% of our population, I believe, is people of color, and about 25% of our people experiencing homelessness are people of color. So,
Really interesting.
yes.
So a couple of just quick fire questions, right? Can we end homelessness?
I think so.
That's not the answer she wanted. Tracy, can we end
I
homelessness?
think so.
We can. We're going to end it one person at a time is what it takes to do it.
And that takes a hot minute, right? Are panhandlers different than homeless people?
At times, yeah.
What do you say about that? Yeah, we also agree with that. And whether Taryn agrees with me or not, if you're watching, my standard plea to people is don't give panhandlers money. All of us do services. If they're hungry, if they need shelter, if they need to talk about housing, please refer them either to West Virginia 211, which you've heard me talk about forever as our information referral network, to the care team, to the KBC. There are many of us who would help anybody that needs any issues, but to stand on the street corner with a bucket is not necessarily your way to guarantee that they're being fed or they're being helped or that services are being provided. So that's my 2 cents on panhandlers. Do you feel like we've seen a decline, so either an ebb or decline in, ebb's not the word, a leveled off or decline in the challenges of substance use disorder?
Substance use disorder, yes.
So what not?
Mental
health. Still a big challenge with mental health. Still a shortage of mental health providers in our community.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the other issue with mental health is that the longer somebody's experiencing homelessness with a serious mental illness, the worse that mental illness gets.
Yep.
Right.
So we have watched people just deteriorate on the streets. So the longer it takes to find an adequate treatment, just the worse off it's going to be.
And my last quick fire question is, are all thieves homeless people?
No.
Sorry, I can't resist. I have, occasionally someone will say to me, that homeless person stole my bicycle, and I can't resist saying, how do you know they're homeless people? Because I know bad people who live in houses. I know bad people who live in houses who do bad things. So it is my honor to have had you two ladies with me today. I promise I wouldn't get either one of them in trouble. So if you didn't like anything they said, blame it on me. Again, as we wrap up today's show, Taryn Wary with the City of Charleston's care team, who does truly care about our community as much or more than anybody I know, and Tracy Strickland, who is a dear friend, but one of the smartest people when it comes to folks experiencing homelessness and ways that we can prevent homelessness in our communities. And last but not least, I am Margaret O'Neill with the United Way of Central West Virginia. Thank you for your time. If you watch us today, we'll see you again next month.